Hey peeps, in this video with the week 1 main slate finishing for DraftKings Reignmakers and for football in general yesterday, I want to take a look at strategy, what lineups won, point totals, how my teams did. Now remember, I don't actually have a lot of really good lineups, but we'll go over that. Here I wanted to talk about, and of course, like some of the tiers and the versus the points projected type thing that I did in a previous video, which was based on projections from 2 different DFS sites. So a common way to target players is to sort of look at matchups, right? And well, one thing that I like to use, and a lot of people do this obviously, is to look at what are the highest projected games by Vegas odds, not by DFS projectors. So this past week, I think this was Saturday night I did this, I looked at the highest projected points, put them up, and there was sort of a gap from here down. So it was KC, the Chargers, the Colts, the Eagles, Baltimore, and the Bengals. KC, by the way, had several things that pointed to Mahomes having a big week, which I didn't necessarily capitalize on in DFS or Reignmakers, but that's its own reasons. But also in that, I like to look at what games have the highest over-unders, because that can be shootout games. And in this case, in the main slate, there were 3 games that stood out pretty clear above the rest. KC, Arizona, Vegas, LAC, and Philly, Detroit. So in that, I then sort of put up the main skill players for the teams with the highest totals, and then the added in teams. And it's like quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end, and then extra if needed, or a running back if needed. The blue are superstar cards on Reignmakers. They may change the superstars, by the way, as the season goes along. I think they've said they will. I'm not 100% sure how that's going to work. But anyway, these are who the superstars are now. The gray ones are ones that I wouldn't consider like must plays, so to speak. Or I didn't consider like must plays. They were more iffy. But the white ones, so you're looking at like Mahomes with Kelsey, Herbert and Eckler, Allen, Williams. Ryan, I gave iffy, Taylor and Pittman, Hurts and Brown, Devontae Smith, who disappointed badly for me, Lamar Jackson, Andrews, possible Bateman, Burrow, Mixon, Chase, Higgins, Murray, Connor, and Brown, Carr, and Adams, and then all these, they have so many weapons, Jacobs, Renfro, and Waller, Goff, Iffy, Swift, and St. Brown. Then I said, well, there's running backs that I can't not have in the pool. And I picked out these guys. I mean, there's superstars, then Kamara, Barkley, Jones, Chubb, and I used sort of the tier rankings that I showed you guys the other day, and then sort of who is a necessity. And then the wide receivers and tight ends, I actually had more on here, but I was like, I wasn't really that confident in the others that beyond. There's so many good names on here that I really only said Jefferson, Hill, and Debo. Because you have Kelsey, Allen, Williams, Pittman, Brown, Andrews, Higgins, Chase, Brown, Adams, St. Brown. But then you have Jefferson and Debo, who are superstars, and Tyreek Hill. And then I said, well, how many does this add up to? And it was like 7 quarterbacks, not counting the gray ones. 13 running backs, 14 wide receivers / tight end. And that sort of looked like enough. So I sort of stopped there. I didn't add more here in particular. I actually stopped and removed. These were sort of like, had to include in the pool. Okay, so, by the way, the Vikings and the Chargers are the only teams that have 2 superstars currently, Jefferson and Cook and Herbert and Eckler. All the others either have 1 or none. Okay, so then looking at how the week came out. Now from the other day, this was like the top tiers, which sort of went down to like 5 tiers, but it was sort of like who is likely to hit in tournaments, to buy one of each. On pricing the other day, probably higher now. Probably some of them could be quite a bit higher. Now for me, I entered 10 core lineups. Only 2 of those came in over 100 points. Now, if you remember from before, I was talking about sample lineups. I wasn't saying these were recommended lineups. I was saying these were chalk type lineups. These were bargain type lineups, cheapest. So from those, we were estimating, like a chalk type core line. This was only core. I didn't go into rare and elite and legendary. Really, honestly, I think elite and legendary and rare were probably the best opportunities right now, but it's just a lot more cash outlay. Anyway, it was like $100 for the core. The bargain, what I considered the bargain good ones were like 70-ish, and the cheapest to get away with was like 30 to buy all 5 if you had none of them. So my 2 best lineups, and remember I said I had quite a few lineups that were projected 70, 80, and really the highest lineups were projected only around 100. I had 70s and 80s. The highest lineups were projected under 100, but in a given week, the highest lineup should be somewhere probably 30 each. I think I might have said a little lower on the last episode, but I had looked at last year's data. And so 30 each is like 150, but if you're looking at it, really you need to get like 125 to have a good cash. 150 to be near the top, most likely in most weeks. So my best team, I only had 2 lineups, but my best one did come in 11th in the single entry core. Now, first prize in that was 1,000, second was 500. I won 60, which I'm fine with. But it was one of those frustrating DFS things where Aaron Jones only got me 11, and I didn't look at all the other lineups above me, but first was far ahead. And if he had gotten like 10 more points, assuming I didn't look at the other lineups, but that could have put me into second. Like they were less than 10 points ahead of me, which would have been $500. So here I put like where they were projected on the tiers from the previous one I mentioned. And again, like tier 5 doesn't necessarily, like the tier, it just means sort of like they were playable players. But then the thing I added here was, were they in these high total games in the categories? Okay. So my best lineup happened to be Hurts, Barkley, Adams, Superstar, Brown. So I had the Philly stack and Aaron Jones. That came in 134 points. By the way, this week it turned out that the keys to winning big were stacking, pretty much having either Jefferson, Chase, or Adams as your superstar, not the running backs. That's just how it worked out this week. On paper, it looked like the running backs were actually the best superstars to go with. But that, if you didn't have one of those, you probably weren't going to hit big. So all of these fit into that thing about the totals in the games. So if it says T and G, it means there was individual team total and they were in one of the highest scoring games projected. Others means they were ones that I sort of put in the essentials. That one's just on the game. Like Vegas wasn't projected the highest total, but they were in the highest, projected one of the highest games and that. Here's what I actually paid for these. This was in my starter pack. This was from an Elevate pack. So when I do that, I figure card per each. This was a booster pack. These 2 are marketplace buys. Now I did get in a little early. I've been in it for almost a month now, and I'm a bargain hunter. So some, not necessarily can get in at these prices now, but I paid $36 net. My starter quarterback was Hurts. It can be used in any core and actually rare lineups now. A core card can be. So I paid $36 for that. It currently, when I checked it, was worth $77. Could be lower than that. There might be a little drawdown after the game, Sunday games. And I made $60 on that lineup. My bet, and that was in the single entry. So I put my best lineup into the single entry. Whether that's smart or not, or you could even do it in the bankroll boosters on the higher levels, or you could put it in the main one. But I said I thought this was my yeah, I did think this was my best lineup. I'm pretty sure. No, that actually may not have been. Well, I put that one in the single entry, and I guess I got lucky because that hit in that. But although it would have hit good in this, my only other good lineup. Now I had a lot of lineups that cashed $3 and whatnot, because I ended up over like $111 in I think 2 cards in cashes. So even though I only had 2 hit over 100, there wasn't much. There were a lot of people, a lot of crappy entries, and a lot of, I guess you could say, some big misses. A few. Anyway, and all my lineups were completely different. I really didn't have any duplicate cards. This one I stacked Vegas 3 times, and that one was a mistake, obviously. I was sort of scrambling too at the last minute because things sold and just scrambling. But I had Carr, Chubb, Adams, Renfro, and Pittman. I ended up with 2 Adams, both from packs. And he was probably one of the ones I had the least confidence in, and he came in huge. All these were from the tiers from the previous one as well, so they were all sort of in the bigger group selection, and they all were in the totals selection criteria. So that was game, team. Was Indy a team? Yeah, Indy was a team, but they weren't. Their total as a game wasn't in that, and that was in others. I won $7 there with 103 points. I paid $42 for that lineup approximately, but Marketplace, my superstar pack for 10 was a Devontae, and I got a Pittman out of a booster pack, currently worth around 65. Now, onto the rares. I've scraped together a couple rare teams. Probably going to have more, and I have sold a couple really good rare players, and I have another really good one that's for sale, but I'm hoping to go up, but you can just see from here. This I thought was my best rare contest, rare lineup. Excuse me. It ended up with 46 points. Then I had one other rare lineup that I thought was garbage, and I had a quarterback who didn't even play because I was scrambling for quarterbacks at the end and didn't have one to allocate to that. I didn't think I needed one. I thought I was just going to get the minimum. This was in the main fiat contest. This one actually got 66 points. So you see Ryan and Burkhead kind of did all right here, but the lesser Indiana guys didn't, and Wandell got hurt. None of these guys were on the tier list, and these 3 were on the game list, or it should have been the team list, sorry. Yeah, the team list. But those should be like on the team list. But so their team was projected high, but the other 2 weren't. As far as what I paid for this, all marketplace buys. I've only gotten a few rares, and I've sold several of them. Remember, I said in a previous video about paying up for rare quarterbacks. In my opinion, pretty much any good, decent starting quarterback under 40, you should buy if you want to get into the rares. The elite, I haven't gotten into yet, so it's hard for me to say the specific prices, but I'll go on that a little bit. So I paid $33 for Matt Ryan. I think that's my biggest buy of any card. Burkhead was $5, Paris Campbell was $6, Mo Alley was $4, and Wandell was $8. All marketplace, currently worth about $84, and I got 6 out of that. Now my garbage one, or what I thought was my garbage one, turned out to be better. And if I had put a quarterback in there, if I put Ryan in there, I would have been up at 86, and I'm not sure how much more that would have paid, but I got 20 bucks out of that off the fiat. And on this one, the Detroit was a qualifier in the game, and Baltimore was supposed to score a lot, but none of them were, basically on any tiers. But here I had Jamal Williams. So these were what I tried to scoop up cheap on there was like rares who he's like a pseudo 2 running back. He's a pseudo 2 wide receiver or projected. He's an okay tight end, and he was a rookie with a lot of potential. But if he gets hurt, that's gonna not be good. Same thing here. Javonte Williams, Detroit, sort of the second running back, and he poached touchdowns yesterday and got 16 points. Corey Davis, decent tier level, depth wide receiver, 14 points. Duvernay of Baltimore looked good. He outperformed Bateman, so he might become Lamar's favorite target. That got 21. Now Taysom Hill was one I kept joking about and telling people $7. He plays quarterback sometimes, and he ended up getting 15 points on a couple long runs and was their leading rusher, I think, or no, behind Kamara. Sorry. And I had one of those for $7, and that actually sold for $25 during the game or right after the game. I got the Zach Wilson from Booster Pack. I bought these all for $7, 9, 5, and they're currently worth that. So I paid $35 for that. worth $79, including the sold one. And I won $20 also off that contest. Now, let's look at what were the best lineups, approximately. Approximately the best chalk lineup, okay, was Hertz, Barkley, Jefferson, Brown, and Swift. And this is actually what won the core fiat contest, which is one of the largest, I think the largest probably, contest in terms of entries for the main slate. So that won $5,000. It did have a Philly stack. And again, Jefferson, Chase, and Devontae turned out to be the keys this week as far as the superstars. And as far as tiers, like tier 3 can, it almost can mean tier 2. You just have to look at it. But tier 1, tier 1, tier 3, tier 3. Whoops. And all of these, again, came in. So one of my sort of original point with this video is this strategy for narrowing players and sort of selecting a pool for a given week. Because remember, we're not on salary cap. We're on like ownership cap. Like you have to buy them and own them. You can play any of them, though. You want as many times. If you have 10 Mahomes, you can do 10 lineups with Mahomes. But you can only use, of course, one superstar per line. So this strategy, that's one of the points of this, worked this week. It doesn't. Is it going to work as good next? Whoops. We're not sure. Okay, so, I mean, no guarantee of that. But it basically just tells you what teams are and games are projected to score the most. And it somehow worked out numerically where I had like a good pool that I was like, well, that's about as many as you need to look at things. Yeah, so he was that was a team and game. That was others. That was others. That was a team and game. And that was just a game only. Now, these were the prices I captured the other day when I did the video here with the tiers and prices. So I guess that's 2 or 3 days old. And this was across the rarities. So core, rare, elite, legendary, rainmaker. And at the time, these were the ones that I highlighted as sort of values in their field or overvalued, just for interest's sake. And like, so the green ones were ones that I said were really good values. The yellow were good values and the red were overpriced relative to others. Hertz overpriced, but he came in. But all these were good values. Probably still are. Like Brown, I don't know. Swift was a big value, and I think he definitely still is, but I have to check the prices. That lineup came in at 162 points, so averaging over 30 each. That's a big 42 right there. That's a huge number. To buy all of those at that time would have cost you $84. And this guy, he won $5,000 with that lineup. To buy it all on the rare level would have cost $550. To buy it all on the elite would have been $4,400. To buy it all on the legendary would have been $22,000. Low floor, not caring about which set it was in. The Rainmaker, there were only a few available, but notice that the Hertz was my pick was the bargain of the ones I saw, and Swift was a good deal as well. Here, Brown was overpriced. Hertz was overpriced again because he was so popular. I think that was a lot of that was in comparison to Murray, but it turned out he did outperform Murray. And Jefferson and Brown were bargains at that tier as well for their positions. Okay, so that actually was the lineup. Now, you can only see what lineups won in the contest that you're in currently. So I can't go look at every contest. So I wasn't in any elite and legendary contests. I can't tell you what won those, but I'm guessing the point totals got less, or the amounts to cash high got less as you went along because there were less entrants and that type of thing. So the ones with the biggest amount of people entering are going to have the highest totals. So what run the rare fiat contest? This one $10,000. It was only 149 points. I'm not sure where I grade out Murray and Kelsey, but I can't remember why I grade that out. But that one was Murray, Swift, Pittman, Chase, and Barkley. No stack on this one. All these pretty much tier 1 or tier 2/3 on projections. DFS projections before. Also with this high total screen I was mentioning. The game total, the team total, other, and other. Fantasy points, all above 30 except for Murray. Going back to what the prices were at. I had Murray and Swift as green was like the biggest bargain, pretty much. Pittman and Barkley were bargains. Chase. But here we're looking at the rare because this would have been 84 for the core winner. This would have been 517 for the rare winner that won 10,000 on first prize. On this one, the Murray was a good deal. The rest of them were sort of in line at the time on my evaluation of tier pricing. Elite 3,900, 22,000. There were only 2 of those, but I had Swift as a good deal there. I had Swift as overpriced there, and Pittman and Chase as good deals there. Okay, and my high score was again 134, and I only had 10 lineups, and not many top tier players. I had a lot of sort of semi-tier top tier players, tier like going down to this tier 3 and 4. The core single entry, that's the one I was mentioning that I came in 11th in. That was 157 points. That had Cousins actually with Jefferson. So the Minnesota stack, Barkley, Pittman, Swift, all top tiers except for Cousins wasn't. He was a tier 4, and he barely sort of. Some people didn't even have him in that. I would have actually had him tier 3 or 4. And he only got 19 fantasy points. And again, that's the one where I believe if I had gotten a little more points from Swift, I would have finished second, possibly. But of course, we've all had that happen in fantasy. So Cousins was not. He's the first one of these to not fit into this criteria, because Minnesota was not projected high, or that game was not projected high. But Minnesota's got a good offense. I mean, I liked them so. But because of Minnesota Green Bay, a lot of people thought it was, I guess Vegas was projecting it lower scoring. So it wasn't one of the high. That's the first one of these sort of like winning lineups that didn't have one. Other team game. Quarterbacks, they didn't really come in huge this week. They most likely, I don't think you're going to see quarterbacks go above 30, 35 anyway. So this one's a core, and looking at how much that lineup cost. And remember, I said like top lineups would have costed 100, and like good bargain, better bargain ones would have been like 70, and cheap would have been like 30 for semi-viable lineups. On the other day, the prices are changing. So that one came in at 68. Again, Swift, big bargain. Cousins was slightly overpriced because he was tier 4. I think I was saying a lot of people would have had him tier 3. And Barkley, Jefferson, and Pittman, I had all those marked as relative bargains versus others in their tier. Cousins here again because of the tier, and here Pittman, Jefferson, Swift, and Swift was on the bargain there. Now going down to the rare single entry. So again, these have smaller pools, and generally will be a smaller score that wins them, or the cash high. Generally, not always. This one came in with 140 points. So that's 9 points less than its rare counterpart. But below 30 player. And this lineup actually won with Brown getting 14 points. This lineup won with Cousins getting 19 points. Both these had Jefferson, though. Here there was no stack. So the stack versus no stack, the 2-player stack, some of them did work well as the no stack. So it's still sort of an open debate. As far as I didn't really look if the individual game by itself did all that well. I don't think it did. I was sort of more looking if they just came in one of those categories for narrowing it, so to speak. On all those did again. And that lineup was $90. That was a more expensive lineup because Kelsey was expensive and Hurts. Swift again cheap, Jefferson cheap. I mean, $13. I don't care if it's a superstar card. Brown, $8. But this one we're looking at the rare, so that was $543. So that actually was, it was $30 more than that. That's not too bad. And I had them all in line, sort of like priced. Same here, all basically in line except one undervalued on the Brown, 4,000, 23,000 on the Legendary. This only won 1,500, but I believe the elites when the prizes really start jacking up. But the rares pay good too. Like you saw, I won $20 with the garbage lineup, at least this week. Okay, so that one, and for again, the Hurts and the Kelsey Reignmakers were relatively cheap. The Swift was relatively cheap. If you're interested in that high cash level, same thing with the Legendary. I mean, this is away from my price range, but these were actually overpriced, and the Jefferson was cheap. So beyond the best chalk lineup that was 162, I approximately, I could figure this out. I'm sure it's around easily, but just what I judged last night after the games, I think the best lineup, the perfect lineup on Reignmakers was actually Wentz with Barkley, Jefferson, Pittman, and Swift. And unfortunately, my Wentz sold right before the games because I had Wentz with McLaurin. I mean, I have a Wentz, a McLaurin, a Gibson. I even have a Logan Thomas for various, and I'm sure I would have paired it with one or two of those. But nonetheless, I believe he came in the highest scoring quarterback. I believe this is the chalk. So 170. So that's even quite a bit above the 150-ish that I was estimating. So you're going to need to almost looking at 30, 35 to 40 each to hit that, to have the perfect lineup. But nobody had that this week on at least the core and the rare level. So Wentz was not in any tier, but actually I would have said, and I did mention that he would have been like the next tier of quarterbacks because this only went down to Fields, Tua, Cousins, Lawrence, and Fields. And I said there's a whole big group, and I said Wentz, all the other ones, Ryan. There's a whole bunch of others, and I said sort of pick and choose the ones you like from there. And Wentz was one I thought was cheap when I got it. Anyway, then the rest of tier 1 and 3, and again, all these came in those high game totals or being in the other, except for the Wentz. Sort of an outlier, I guess you could say. No stack there. That lineup would have costed $72 for the perfect lineup, and I had the Swift again as the big bargain, Pittman, Jefferson, and Barkley as bargains. Wentz, quarterback, I did highlight that as a rare big bargain. It was $30 versus $18. I mean, buy the rare quarter. I mean, honestly, rare decent quarterbacks under 50 seem like a good deal. I just picked up a Wentz, actually. I needed another rare quarterback, and I was debating between Wentz and several others, and I actually just got one. Now, could I be swayed by that good first week in L-Tank? Yeah, I mean, it could happen, certainly. But that was a bargain at the time from when I cited the prices. I believe that price was correct. Let me see. Actually, I know I didn't have his prices captured. I think I went in and looked what the lowest was at the time, so that possibly could be wrong. Pittman was a bargain there. Jefferson there. Swift there. Okay, so the bottom line is, I guess what I'm getting at is, this is a decent way to help narrow it down. You can obviously using projections and sort of tiering it, but this did work well week 1. But you have to add in others that are sort of essential players and come up with like reasonable numbers. So like if you had, I didn't do this, but if you were covering it all, you'd be like, well, I'm going to have these top 7 quarterbacks, I'm going to have these top 13 running backs, and these top 14 wide, and then combos of that sort of covered it. And that would have hit everything except for the Wentz and the Cousins. That would hit all these other players, at least in week 1. And you would have, depending on the combination you had it in, you would have cashed good up to winning tournaments. And you can also sort of see the ones I had grayed out really didn't come in, which sort of was bad for me because I have a Ryan, I have a Smith, I have 2 Smiths, I have a Bateman, I have a Jacobs, I have a Renfro, I have a Waller, I have a Goff. Or no, did I get a Goff? Yeah, I got a Goff as a replacement for somebody. And I own quite a few of these myself, but I don't own some of the top ones, or I've sold them. Well, let's see. I sold my Kelsey, I believe, but I own a, did I sell my, yeah. But I own a Herbert, I own a Williams, I own a Pittman, I own a Ryan, I own a Hurts, I own a Brown, I own a Smith, I own a Lamar. I sold my Andrews, I own a Bateman, I got a Chase, lucky one, that might be sold. I own a Connor and a Brown. I own all these. I think I own a Goff now. I don't have a Swift, sadly. I own the same Brown. I own a Barkley. I own a Jones. I own a Chubb. I own a Harris and a Cook. I don't have Kamara. I don't have the top guys there. I don't have a Jefferson, unfortunately. I don't have a Hill. I do have a Debo. So you can sort of see that how it came in. I had one nice hit. Even though I only had 2 lineups come in, perhaps maybe I was lucky the way it skewed. I think a lot of mine came in 50 to 60 points. When they were pretty much projected 70s to 80s. So potentially I was lucky there. That one cashed 7. But of course I did plan to have the stack. I did plan that. And Barkley, actually, I think this might have been my favorite lineup. That's why I put it in the single entry. I'm just not 100% sure why I had Adams in there, but I think it was mostly just based on projections, that he was projected so high. He was the highest projected one I had beyond those. Because Barkley, yeah, and the Jones was a bad choice. Like if I had put the Pittman in there, I would have won that contest or barely finished second. But that's how it goes in fantasy. You know how it is. But this was just one of my multiple, like several core lineups. But then again, also, like I mentioned, I won 20 with this garbage rare lineup that I had paid garbage for. However, they are higher now, depending. And again, rare quarterbacks in general, you want to be careful of selling them too cheap. Running backs, good running backs, and if the rare category is still not sort of rare and up are still not filling as much as they are, they're probably going to increase, but depends how many new players join, how much existing players want to spend more. Then if a crap lineup can get 20, I didn't do this in the Bankroll Buster. The Bankroll Buster got oversubscribed right away. And I was like, man, do I want to take my chances on just winning? And I actually thought it was a better chance than this to cash. And like I said, I didn't play above that. And like this may not be like, there may be more outliers popping in the top. But, I looked at last year's totals as well to determine the tiers of who comes in, of how many spots down to go. And I think it was like 11 or 13 quarterbacks. Generally, one of those, if you go down, one of those will be the top scorer in a given week. I'm not sure. Wentz might have already broken that one this year. And that gives you like a range of how far down to go. Anyway, so hope you guys, let me know if you had any good lineups come in, or any good draw, if you had any good pack hits, because I've had like really good pack hits. I mean, I got the last one got a Tua common and another good common, and then I had the one that I posted with the with two good commons and a great fucking. I mean, I've had 3 really good packs in a row. I probably should just keep at it, but I'm sort of trying not to buy too many too fast. And 2 of those were momentum. 2 of them were the $50 momentums. One of them was the $20 booster. All right, guys, signing up for now. Hope you have a good one. I'm gonna try to do another one here of some bargains that I think are there in the marketplace, but it's all relative. It's assuming prices either remain stable or go up to some degree, and of course how players perform. You never know with injuries and all that. All right, have a good one.